Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyana Habib ilahi Rabbil Alameen Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad wa alihi tayyibin al-tahirin al-masumin al-mazlumin wa la'natu ad-da'ima ala a'da'ihim ajma'in min alan ila qiyam yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and also greetings and felicitations upon the beginning of the month of Sha'ban. As our program will look at the Islamic family law, however, as we are in the eve of the 1st of Sha'ban, I would like to congratulate and also like to remind myself and all the viewers who are with us with some of the rituals, rites and rituals of the month of Sha'ban. Nevertheless, I'm pretty aware that all of you who are participating in the programs at Hidayat, who are participating in the programs in the different masajids and Husainiyas, definitely they are aware of the beauty of this month of Sha'ban. Nevertheless, like I said, just want to remind myself and I want to be the part and parcel of the reward that you all will receive. So I would say that this month is one of the fascinating month, is one of those months considered to be the month of the Prophet. Sha'ban, which really comes from the word in Arabic which is shab, which really means shab as a youth. So it's a month for those who strive, for those who thrive, for coming closer to God with that sort of essential quality of youthfulness within themselves. As it's a month of the Prophet, as Prophet is known to be the Rahmatul lil Alameen, mercy to mankind, the month of Sha'ban contains within it elements of mercy. Therefore, which means that it is a month in which sins of sinners are forgiven. It is a month in which du'as and prayers are answered. According to many of the scholars of spiritual wayfaring, akhlaqi scholars, they tend to say that anything that needs to happen, that should happen in the month of Rajab, Sha'ban or Ramadan, being a very unique and special months. Now, what is very much required of us is to really have a program for ourselves with a great deal of watchfulness, that we would carry out this program on a routine and daily basis. And if we pay attention to the month of Ramadan, we do find that it automatically provides us with a program of getting up on at such a time, having a food at such a time, praying at such a time, and breaking our fast at such a time. This is an indication that God is after organizing the life of human beings, and through organization of oneself, through discipline, one would be able to achieve high standards or high levels in terms of the spirituality as well. Now, I would like to give few practical examples in relation to having a program for ourselves in the month of Sha'ban. If we pay attention to the last month or the month of Rajab which we had, we do find that there were certain du'as to be recited, and these du'as were really helpful to really provide us with some sort of direction in our ibadat, in our mustahabbat. Now the same applies in the month of Sha'ban, but there isn't any as much as du'as that we find to be recited on a regular basis that we see in the month of Rajab, for example. The regular du'as that you would find in the month of Sha'ban is the Salawat Sha'baniya, which is a special salutations or blessings being sent upon the Prophet on that long salawat, which is known as a salawat of the month of Sha'ban. Number two is the Munajat Sha'baniya. The Munajat Sha'baniya, which is the whispered prayers of Amirul Mu'mineen, which is a very unique and special way of connecting with God must be recited. If one could recite every day, fabiha, well and good. If it cannot be recited every day, if one could divide that dua into parts and then recite this dua. And as a matter of fact, we've been looking at a commentary of the month dua of Shabaniya on Wednesday nights in our program, which is known as Perspectives. So I hope you follow that as well, which is on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Now, fasting, number 3. So you have these Salawat Shabaniya, you have the Munajat Shabaniya, and then fasting in the month of Shaban. And you would find that for those who is unable to fast in the month of Shaban, there is a particular tasbih, there's a particular zikr that needs to be chanted. And when they chant this zikr, then they can, for example, be able to grasp, we will be able to acquire the same amount of reward that one could acquire it. Or for example, one could really give in charity. While given in charity, the amount that is being given in the charity will compensate in relation to the fast that a person have missed. So there are different ways that one is able to really make it up for the missed prayer, for the missed fast. So God is providing us a way, a methodology by which we could really acquire the reward of fasting in the month of Shaban. Unfortunately, or usually the case is that we tend to, for those individuals who are seniors, for those individuals who cannot fast, usually we tend to give the fidya, the money that is given out as a wajib, because the person cannot fast. But usually for the mustahab fast, we tend not to really consider as giving out some charity in relation to the fast that is missed in the month of Shaban. So we give charity. Why not we give this charity with the intention of that, because I have missed the fast in the month of Shaban, so this charity that I'm given is in compensation of the fast that I am missing in the month of Shaban. That could be done, so one could really accumulate. And al-amalu bin niyya, if a person really intend to do that, and especially tonight being the eve of a Thursday night, and we are entering the, it's a Shab Jume in England here, so we are really entering the Friday, which is tomorrow, and also the month of Shaban. Let's intend it, let's decide, let's plan it, let's program ourselves that we are able to accumulate these rewards. Now, fasting, as we said, certain zikr and askar could be, a person could really perhaps perform in this month, and then he is able to really get the blessing from doing so. For example, you have a lot of astaghfar to be recited. This is the month of astaghfar, as we we recite in the ziyarat of the Prophet that people used to go to the Prophet and seek the forgiveness of God through the Prophet. Right? So through the Prophet, or Prophet will do astaghfar for them on behalf of them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Prophet is becoming the medium, when Prophet is becoming the vehicle for the forgiveness of our sins, so therefore the month of the Prophet also becomes the medium for forgiveness of sins. Let me tell you this, brothers and sisters. When we approach to carry out certain act, there are certain adab, certain sort of morals, certain manners in which that act should be performed, right? And it is quite important that a person pays attention to these things in order for that act to be accepted, to be blessed, to be have a sort of focus towards this act. So now, the same way, when we are performing astaghfar, there is a certain methodology by which one should. Yes, God knows. One could really communicate with God wherever, in whatever way one would want. But God also have provided us with a methodology by which we connect to God. Right? Usually, what happens is that people tend to undermine the aspect of tawassul, undermine the aspect of prayers, undermine the laws by saying that, okay, God knows and you can, pray to Allah whichever way you want, so you don't need tawassul, connect to God directly. So all of these tawassulat of Ahl Bayt and all that is a big question mark, right? Now, if you look at the same understanding and you pay attention to paying towards the Qibla, well, God is everywhere. Why are you praying towards the Qibla? It doesn't really matter, right? When you are criticizing the tawassul of Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam, then you criticize everything, right? You can bring you can bring under the category of doubt to all of the other aspects as well. You see, right? So therefore, there's a set methodology, there's a set pattern and ways of doing things, right? And that's how man is supposed to behave in that fashion, even in the secular sense. If he doesn't behave in that fashion, people will frown upon him, people will not accept it. There's a certain methodology, there's a certain ways, there's a certain way of doing things. So same way now, when we look at that, now going back, when we look at that the Prophet is considered to be mercy to mankind, and it is through the Prophet that sins of people are forgiven. So now this is the month of Prophet. Through the month of Prophet, if one seeks astaghfar, then his sins are being forgiven as well. So therefore, recitation of astaghfirullah wa as'alahu tawbah is highly recommended, 70 times daily. Or for example, if one could recite astaghfirullah alladhi la ilaha illa huwa ar-rahmanur rahim al-hayyul qayyum wa atubu ilayh daily 70 times, that will be great. Or if one could recite, for example, la ilaha illallah wa la na'budu illa iya mukhlisina lahu ad-din walau karihal mushrikun 1000 times daily, if one could really recite. And obviously, as much as one could recite salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad is amazing and fascinating. Giving sadaqah, for example, especially now it is the first of the month, and it's the salat of the first of the month to be offered, for example. And then there's a special prayer that every Thursday night, for example, tonight being the Thursday night, every Thursday night this prayer should be offered. And this prayer goes in this fashion: 2 rakah with the niyat of nearness to God. Each rakah one would recite hamd and ikhlas 100 times, and after the prayer one would recite salawats. So recitation of Qul Wallahu Ahad, which is recommended in this month, is also taken care if every Thursday night a person performs this prayer. I really sincerely congratulate to all of my viewers, mu'mineen and mu'minat, who are watching us from different parts of the world, and I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your amal and ibadat of the month of Rajab and also the coming month as well. And I also ask you all to really look into the munajat of Shabaniya and try to understand the deeper meanings behind them. Try to contemplate upon these meanings. Try to think about them, question them, write these things down in the very dua books. What does it really mean by, for example, najwa? What does it really mean by? Ask those people who are in your communities, those who are scholars there. Ask them, ask the meaning behind these du'as. What does this line mean? What is the translation of it? This is the way of the Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam. They came to teach us the path towards God. And du'as are, like I said earlier, are nothing but the mouthpiece of Tawheed. They are full of ma'arif, they are full of knowledge in relation to Tawheed. And it is very much required that one make oneself familiar with these du'as, so that that nur, so that that knowledge descends in our heart. Knowledge is, as Imam Sadiq alayhi salam clearly mentions in one of the famous hadiths, which is known as Hadith Unwan Basri. Unwan Basri was a great companion of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, who was at the age of 94 or 96. At that old age, he comes to Imam Sadiq and inquires that, will you take him as a student? Because Unwan Basri was a student of one of the scholars of that time, Anas bin Malik, and who was from a Sunni maslak, and Unwan Basri was also of the similar school of thought. And when he comes to Imam Sadiq and he says that, "Oh Imam, because I have heard a lot of good things about you, about your knowledge, would you take me as a student?" And Imam Sadiq told him that, I'm under heavy surveillance. It is better that you benefit from Anas bin Malik himself rather than coming to me, and you will, the caliphs and the khalifas will question you and you will get in trouble. So he avoided him, so he kind of rejected him. This really breaks the heart of Unwan Basri, and he goes to the grave of the Prophet and he prays 2 rakat prayer and he does tawassul, and then eventually he comes. What I'm trying to say here is that I'll deal with this story of Unwan later, of Basri later on. But anyway, at that age of 96, he still wants to acquire knowledge. He comes to Imam Sadiq and he was rejected, and he becomes sad and he does tawassul, and then he confine himself to his house, not going anywhere. So he is very eager and yearning for that knowledge. So it is very much required that all our life, we yearn, we kind of strive and struggle to really acquire knowledge. And that is and that's what the Prophet did. Prophet, he himself, who is at that level of kamal and perfection, he said, "Rabbi zidni ilma," "Oh Allah, increase in my knowledge." Abu Ali Sina, who was the greatest of all scholars that I personally have not seen, that such a polymath within the Muslim scholastics, such a great scholar that the Muslim era have ever given to mankind. Ibn Sina, right? When he was about to leave this dunya, just before he was in the presence of the doctor, and he asked a student of his that, "Okay, I had a question in mind, can you look it up for me?" But the doctor said that, "You're about to die now. What are you talking about?" He says that, is it better to know and then I die, or is it dying without knowing is better, right? So therefore, our path towards God is through knowledge, is through understanding. Now, in this hadith of Unwan Basri, which we will deal with the hadith itself of Unwan Basri, the very first thing the Imam mentions that al-ilmu nurun yaghzifu fi qalbi man yasha. Knowledge is not by books, is not by acquiring. The true knowledge is like light. And this light is placed in the heart of whosoever God desire and who wishes. So now, this doesn't mean that I am undermining that one should not go towards accumulating knowledge by books, by learning. Yes, that is there. But the true knowledge, a person could really accumulate information, could have the very encyclopedic understanding of things. But when it comes to that true knowledge of being that nur and guidance for his heart to show the path towards God, that might not be there. He might be an expert in philosophy and proving the oneness of God and the existence of God, but utilization of this knowledge as light to guide him towards God might not be there. So this means that true knowledge is like light, and that is placed in the heart of whosoever God desires. So what is from us is to ask Allah that, oh Allah, increase in my knowledge. Number two, the increase of knowledge, as we know it is light, and as I have not been to a maktab, to a madrasa, to a university, or I'm at a time or at a place that I'm not being able to understand the levels of Tawheed and the mystical and the mysterious sort of fascinating understanding, then what shall I do? Then I should look at these du'as of the Masumeen. Then I should recite these du'as sincerely. Then I should try to understand these du'as of the Masumeen. Then I should recite the Quran, try to look at the meaning of the Quran, try to understand the Quran. That is the path. So it is not the question that I have to go to a seminary or to a hawza or to a university to really have the knowledge of God. But if I pay attention to the du'as of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and I recite them sincerely and I try to understand them sincerely, Allah will place that knowledge in our heart, right? And Allah will give us that contentment of understanding that Tawheed. Sorry for taking too much of your time to really introduce this great and blessed month of Shaban. Now we would continue with our discussion in regards to the Islamic family law. As in the series of discussion of the Islamic family law, we have so far covered the discussions on marriage itself, because we said that a family law is only able to come into existence or is only apply when a family is formed. If the family is not formed, there's no question of family law. Right? So marriage is a discussion that we had, and within that marriage we talked about the rights of a wife. We talked about those whom it is illegal to marry. There are casual causal factors. Because of certain cause it becomes illegal, but sometimes because of blood relationships it becomes illegal, which we discussed that. Then how a marriage contract is solemnized, solemnization of a marriage contract, we discussed that. The formula of a marriage contract. Then we looked at the temporary marriage. Then we look at, for example, the issues in regards to meher, which is dowry or the marriage gift, for instance. Then we look at the defects in a marriage that becomes the reason of annulment of marriage. Because of certain reasons a marriage is nullified, right? What are those reasons? We looked at that. Then we looked at divorce, the types of divorce, the ruling of divorce, for example, the waiting period and iddah and how important it is, and the complication that might take place within the iddah itself, which will lead up to make certain marriages permanently haram, right? Then we looked at the custody of children. In our last program, that's what we looked at, the custody of children after the divorce. Tonight we would like to introduce, if time permits, and also look into certain issues of the inheritance. See, inheritance, there is a straightforward law within the Quran, and by which the inheritance is distributed according to the clear verses of the Quran. For example, if there is no will from the marhum, from the deceased, the person who died, the inheritance is distributed according to the verses of the Quran. If there be a will, and within the will as well there is a part in which the deceased have the right of distribution according to his will, but the other part, regardless of what he has made it as a will, it will not be carried out. Right? And it will be distributed according to the law of inheritance. For example, I made a will that all of my property, for example, be given to the youngest son, for instance, right? I made a will. But this will, according to the law of inheritance itself, is invalid unless the person have given all of the property to the youngest son, for example, and not given to the older children. That is something else, right? But if he has made a will in which only 1/3 of the amount of that property will be given and the rest will go, for example, or if he made a will that all of his property be given to the charity and to the masjid, right? Well, he has no right as such to do so. It is distributed according to the adl, according to the justice of God, which have the law of inheritance. So if he want to do that, that is before. For example, if he wants to give his house as a Husainiya, he will make this house as a Husainiya and he would live there. He would transfer it to the Husainiya and then he would live there as a rentee, for example, till he is alive. So now, when we look at the law of inheritance, like I said, it is quite important for us to be familiar with the Islamic family law so that the oppression, zulm does not take place in our communities. And we are not influenced by certain values, certain secular values, certain cultural values, and we think that, okay, this is what Islam is all about, for example, and we implement that thinking that Islamic, but unfortunately we are not doing that. So it's quite important to make oneself and our communities familiar with the law. Now, there are through two means the law of inheritance will be executed or will come into place. One is with nasab, which means that through a relationship, right? Through a blood relationship, the law of inheritance will distribute. Through a blood relationship is established via legitimate bounds, for example, a marriage, such as brothers, such as paternal and maternal uncles, father, mother, blood relationship. Okay. Now, the other ways is through affinity, through sabab, through a means, through a reason. For example, a marriage, right? A wife, for instance, and through that, for example, the laws of inheritance come into play. For instance, wife will not inherit anything of the property from the house except the structure of the house. The value of the structure of the house is inherited by the wife, but not the land of the house, for example. If there be a distribution of a house to the children or to the parents according to the law of inheritance, she will get the value of the structure, but not the land, for instance. So one law is because of the sabab, which is the affinity, and the other law is because of the blood relationship. Now, if we look at the Quran and the verses of the Quran and also the Hadith, there are very clear sort of indications. There are different levels. You have different levels of distribution of the inheritance. If the first level, if the first block, if the first level, if the first group is full, then it will not go to the second group. If the second group is full while the first is missing, then it will not go to the third group. If the third group is full while not going to it will not go to the fourth group, for example. So who are these groups? How it is divided, which we will be dealing with, in our discussion. Now, in regards to the entitlements, in regards to the detail of the entitlements, a half share is allocated to, number one, an only daughter when there is no son to share the inheritance. So if there is no son and there is only one daughter, half a share of all is provided to the daughter. Also, like as we can kind of point out to the Ahl Sunnah as well, also according to those four Sunni schools of thought, we find that the deceased son's only daughter has the same rights as the only daughter, for example, right? So the deceased son's daughter will have the same right as the original own daughter, which is half of the inheritance, half a share is allocated to. But for the Imamiyya scholars, we say that maintain that the deceased son's daughter inherits her father's entitlement. The deceased son's daughter will inherit the father's entitlement, meaning that whatever the deceased son is supposed to inherit from the father, the deceased son's daughter will inherit the exact amount. An only sister or half sister, when there is no brother to share the inheritance. So there is only sister or there is half sister even, right? A husband whose wife leaves no offsprings. So wife have some property and have no children. The husband will inherit from the wife because they inherit from each other. And the inheritance, let me tell you this one. The inheritance, like as we were talking about the groups, you have group A, group B, group C, which we'll talk about who are in group A, who are in group B and group C later on. But let me tell you this, as a universal rule, the wife will inherit from the husband in all groups, and the husband will inherit from the wife in all groups. So they will be sharing, inheritance from each other regardless of who exists in the group or who do not exist in the group. You see? Now, a quarter share is allocated to a husband whose wife leaves offspring. So, if a wife have some offsprings, a quarter share is for the husband. Otherwise, if she doesn't leave any offspring, then half will be given to the husband and the rest will be distributed according to these groups. For example, in the groups you have the father and mother. Or if you do not have the father, then you have brothers and sisters. If you do not have the brothers and sister, you have the aunts and the uncle, right? So every group, if the father and mother not there, it goes to the second group. If the second, so the half is to the husband and the half is distributed according to the law of inheritance. Now, if the wife have the children, then if she leaves offspring, then quarter of the share is given to the husband. Or a wife whose husband leaves no offspring, a quarter is given to her. For the husband is a half, but for the wife is a quarter. Now, I'm pretty sure you have this question in your mind, that why does daughter gets half and a son gets full? Why does a husband is getting, for example, half, but a wife is getting a quarter? See, the daughter inherits from the husband, the woman, female. They inherit from the father and mother, and also they inherit from the husband. You see, so because of this reason, we tend to find that there is a compensation in regards to the female. You see, that's the reason. Now, 2/3 share is allocated to the combined allocation of 2 or more daughters who have no brothers to share in the inheritance. So the 2/3 share is allocated to the combined allocation of 2 or more daughters, if there be, who have no brother at all, among there, because that half goes to the daughter and to the brother, and the half is distributed among the daughters. The combined share of 2 or more sisters or half sisters who have no brothers to share in the inheritance. Now, a 1/3 share is allocated to the mother of a deceased child who leaves no offspring and has no brothers to share in the inheritance. two or more maternal half brothers and or sisters. So we are one by one we are trying to point out to the distribution of the inheritance, how much of the amount is distributed. I know it's a bit complicated, but I'll swiftly and quickly go through this so that so that we can have an overall understanding of it. And eventually in the conclusion, what I'll do is I'll give you very basic principles of inheritance which are in these three groups. So at least I would like to bring it to your attention, at least I would like to bring it to your attention that when it comes to Islam, it's very precise. There are rules and laws for everything. It's not like just Islam is a very shallow or outward name that one should follow. For example, within Christianity, you have that creed of believing in Christ as the Son of God. The present Christianity, believing the Christ as the Son of God for their salvation, and maybe in Lent they fast, and that's about it, right? When it comes to inheritance, is there any law? When it comes to divorce, when it comes to child custody, are there any laws as such within Christianity? Well, there is not, right? So what I'm not saying that Christianity is shallow, but I'm trying to point out to the intricacies that exists within Islam, within the Islamic rules and laws. And unfortunately, as we have reached to the end of time, unfortunately today, when we look at Muslims, when we look at the implementation of these laws, I will be very honest with you, we are maybe implementing 2% of it. It is very unfortunate to say that. It's etiquettes, the akhlaqiyat, the adab, the manaviyat, and also the laws that are there. As one would say that we are living at a time where we are taking the janaza of Islam towards its grave. We haven't buried yet. When we are not practicing that 2%, that means we have buried Islam. So we are taking the janaza of Islam towards its grave. I hope and pray that Imam al-Asr comes and then he brings revive that Islam, ahya that Islam again, and that we implement Islam the way we are supposed to implement. Thank you very much for being with us. We hope and pray on this eve of Thursday that Allah forgive all our marhumin with a special forgiveness, and being the beginning of the month of Shaban, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this month as a blessed month, and we practice some of those things which Prophet used to practice in this month, some of the sunnahs, and be vigilant, be sort of like watchful of what we are doing, and at least do one practice. In the morning we say that, okay, today I will make sure that I will be careful and watchful that I finish one page of the Quran, for example. Inshallah, ghafarallahu lana wa lakum, wa salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Goodbye from question time and goodbye from Hidayat. Thank you very much. Thank you.